Hello, Anthony Vessecchia, Level 3 TPI here in my studio, Bodycrafters Inc. in Naples, Florida. I'm here on behalf of Scratch Golf Academy to talk to you today about something called early extension. This is what I've seen this in a lot of golfers that lack flexibility in their lats. They lack flexibility in their hamstrings, and they may have issues with just disassociating their upper and lower body and understanding the coordination of the actual golf swing. So what we're gonna do today is we're gonna go over all the things that those are. So to explain to you exactly what early extension is, if you were to set up down target line, just how we are here with the camera shooting directly through your hands, straight out to the target, you would want to then draw a line right down your rear end when you're at your address position. So then from there, you're going to go ahead and start your swing. And if you see on the downswing that your rear end is moving away from that line and you're lifting up and you're getting to this position at impact, then you've done what's called an early extension. Now, what can early extension lead to? There's a few things. So it's going to slow down your rotational velocity for sure. And what I mean by that is if I'm spending time on the downswing and my body's moving this way, I'm going to have to still get down to the bottom of my bottom point of my swing here. And the way that most guys are gonna do it is they're gonna round their back. Anytime you're spending time going into flexion in your spine, you're spending less time rotating. You can actually practice this just for fun too. If you try to go rounded and try to turn, it's a lot harder than if you're in an extended position. It's much easier to turn. So there's that, and that's why that'll slow down. What it's also gonna do is leave you under rotated usually through the target. So you'll end up about this position when you should be more in this position with your rear end back. And you'll see there's more rotation than when I'm here. What will also happen many times is you'll get to flipping because you've slowed down your rotational velocity. You're not rotating through like this. So what will happen is because you get to here and your rear end moves forward, you'll end up throwing your hands at it or flipping early release of the hands of the club head. So that just takes away from your large muscles generating all the power out towards target. Another thing that it can do, because if you've started here and we have your swing path, you would like to see that inside out. Well, if I move forward, then my swing path is gonna move forward with me. So that's gonna leave you sometimes over the top. You can correct it by moving your arms and getting through, but now we're swinging more with arm strength and we've taken away those large muscles once again. So coming in this way, keeping the rear end back, that's proper. Early extension gets you here. It also makes you steep in many cases as well. I'm gonna talk to you about 3 ways, there are a few, more than 3 ways, but a couple ways that you can test for this. I find many times that it's a lot to do with lat flexibility. And that is my issue. I have issues with that as well. And I'm gonna show you the test for that. But what happens is when you get to the top of the backswing, I'm gonna turn this way for you, and you start that downswing by moving your hips, your arms will either drop or your body will move forward if the lat is too tight. So if this lat muscle, which attaches down here, runs up and attaches to the back of your arm here, is too tight, you're gonna have a hard time getting that big backswing that you want and be able to move your hips forward. So it's gonna alleviate that stretch by early extending, or you're gonna just drop your hands to compensate. So that's one big one. The other one is hamstring flexibility. If you can't touch your toes, then you'll have a tendency when you get to this position, when you want to be at impact with the straight leg and your rear end back, which gives you a little bit more side bend at impact than being up high like this in an early extension. If this hamstring's tight, it's gonna do the same thing as the lat. It's gonna want you to move forward to alleviate the stretch. So it's gonna try to go, okay, well, that's just a lot. I want you to stand up and get out of that. Or you may keep your knees bent, and some guys will slide. We're not getting into that today. Sliding the knees, which a lot of golfers actually do that, but then they stiffen up at impact. So again, you'd still have a hard time getting there if your hamstring's tight. The other one is just disassociation. Do you have the ability to separate between your upper and lower body so that your body can move this way while this upper body stays behind it? So the test for that is to look in a mirror, put your hands here, see if you can move your hips right and left, rotationally, not salsa dance, without moving your upper body at all. Then you do the same thing with the upper body. You test to see if you can just move the upper body without the hips moving at all. That's a quick test for disassociation. The other one is just coordination of the movement. I talked about that earlier. And in part 2, this is a 3-part video, by the way. In part 2, actually it'll be part 3. We're going to talk about disassociation and coordination. In part 2, we are going to talk about how you're going to make your lats and your hamstring looser. Today, I just want to explain to you how and what can create the early extension. I moved the camera to this position so you can see the drill that I'm going to do now to test to see if your lats are loose enough. So you're going to start with your arms perfectly straight here. And what you're going to do is make sure that they don't bend or your arms don't move out at any point during this. So you're going to get in this position down here like this. You're going to push your lower back against the wall and make sure that it's touching the wall the entire time. What will happen is if your arm goes back and you can't get there, you will arch your back to try to help. You don't want to arch your back. That's cheating. We're not cheating ourselves here. We want to see if this could be one of the causes that cause early extension. So head against the wall. And you're going to reach and see if you can touch the wall. If you notice, I remember I said earlier, this is my flaw. I need to work on it. So in the meantime, I've been taking a shorter backswing so that I don't get myself past that ability, my stretchability, so that I don't get into that early extension. So I failed this test. And if watching from this angle, you don't want to see people or yourself do this. You don't want to see yourself bend your elbows to get there or spread out to get there. You want to go straight up. So you can see that I just can't do it. So that's the test for stretching, checking your lats to see if that could be the cause. Next is just touching your toes. Can you touch your toes? That's the check for your hamstrings. If you can't touch your toes, we're going to watch part 2 so you can learn the drills to fix how to get more flexibility in your hamstrings. Same thing with the lats. Now checking for disassociation. Disassociation, again, is where you're checking between your upper and lower body. Can they move independent from one another? All right, so if you can't do that, if you don't notice it much here, I like to put a club so I can really see how much my upper body's moving and I can stare down at my lower. And then I do the same thing. If you want to, you can go through a belt loop with an alignment rod and you just try to move the hips without the shoulders. Okay, so that's the simple test there. And the other one, like we already said, was just the coordination of movement. That coordination of movement, can you hold yourself and get into that position while you're keeping your spine erect without rounding out and being in this position? Okay, so you just want to watch your swing. Like I said, draw a line down your back and make sure that you can get through and your hip is still touching that line the entire time. Just to understand again, early extension, it will cause you to hit the ball a lot less further than you think you could. It's going to mess with your coordination tremendously during the swing. You kind of will be spraying the ball all over the place. It causes slices, hooks. I mean, you name the swing fault, and early extension is probably gonna have something to do with that. Again, subscribe so that you get notified for part 2 of this. You definitely please subscribe. I want you to get better. So be ready for part 2. Part 2, we're going to go over hamstrings and we're going to go over lat length or the flexibility in your lat muscles. I'm going to show you all the different drills, well, plenty of drills to go ahead and try to fix that for you. And then in the part 3, we're going to go over how you're going to learn to disassociate upper and lower body and some drills and exercises that will help with that as well. And we're going to go through just the coordination of the movement. I'm going to show you some drills using walls and some training aids to just get used to that feel of keeping your rear end back and getting through. And in the meantime, you may find that you have to just shorten your backswing a little bit until you work on your flexibility and give it, 2-3 weeks of the drills that I give you to get your flexibility up so that you can start to take your swing a little bit further. So many times I see guys taking very, very large back swings and they just don't have the flexibility to be there. So they're pulling themselves out of a very athletic position. You'll see them almost in this position. And sometimes I'll ask them if they can jump from that position. They can't, instead of being in a position of power where they can actually jump and get their weight transfer. They can get back to it. So a lot of times I see the guys that get in a certain position and they get there, you'll see them, then they start their power once they get halfway back down. I'm not saying that it can't happen, but it's just you're pulling yourself out of a nice, balanced, stable position. And obviously you want that in most any athletic thing that you're doing. The more balanced, the more stable you are to the ground, the more power you can generate off of it. So again, subscribe, be ready for part 2, be ready for part 3.